Oh, okay. Well, let's look at 1 Samuel. And 1 Samuel begins with the interesting story of Hannah and the birth of Samuel. And I think a part of the story of 1 Samuel, of course, in this early thing, is you see again that polygamy doesn't work. There's some speculation as to exactly what the relationship of Hannah was with her rival wife, because clearly her husband loves her over and against the rival wife. And it could very well be, I heard this recently and I thought, yeah, that's a plausible argument, a plausible idea, is that in their world, often when men did practice polygamy, it was in order to have children. And you had concubines through which you had children because you just needed a workforce again. And it could be that since Hannah couldn't have children, he'd married this second woman in order to have children, to guarantee an heir. But then you have the same situation here then, where Hannah would be the senior wife, but the junior wife is jealous of her, and when she has the kids, she goes after her. Just like happened between Hagar and Sarah. Hagar then despised Sarah. Ha ha, I got the heir and you don't. I mean, that kind of a mindset. And so then the feuding begins. And it looks like this is one of those things, one of those situations. And in that environment, of course, Hannah's life is absolutely miserable because this gal apparently has taken every opportunity to jab it. And remember, in their world, a woman's worth was really built around her children. And I think I've mentioned before, and I'll point out later on, Joab and his two brothers, three of the most powerful men in Israel. He's called the sons of Zariah. Their dad's name was Kish. Zariah was their mother's name. See? And, I mean, she had a name in Israel because she produced 3 bruisers. It's like, I'm a woman. Look at my sons. I mean, that's their world. That's the way they think. And the more children a woman could have, I mean, a woman wanted to crank out as many as she could, be a baby factory. But the more children she had, the more acclaim she had. And in society, I mean, other women were jealous of her because, oh man, look at the brood that she has, and they'll take care of her. And I mean, her reputation was built around because you're in a world where the labor force is your survival. And even now in the Middle East, men marry women on the basis of how many kids they can have. I mean, if they think this woman is going to be able to give me a dozen babies, let's go for it. Because again, even now in the Middle East, children with wealth, even though they don't have jobs in their worldview, it's still wealth. And so you have this rivalry going on.
So, verse 8, Elkanah says to Hannah, "Am I not better to you than 10 sons?"
Yeah.
He understands that she's depressed.
Right.
And he's just trying to pick her up.
Yeah, he's trying to tell her, I love you so much. Aren't I better than sons? And we do. I think we have a situation of men who dearly loved his wife and would love to give her children but can't. And for you guys, I don't know if you've been through this yet. My wife and I, we have one child. We wanted another. And she couldn't get pregnant. In fact, at one point she did, and we lost the baby. But we tried for years to have a second child. And they call it secondary infertility or something like that. And you think, well, our first one just was a surprise, so we thought, oh, well, having kids must be easy. But when we went to have the next one, it didn't happen. The first few months, the doctor says, oh, don't worry about it. It usually takes 6 months to a year trying. Don't worry about it. But, after a year, then all of a sudden, the stress begins. Yeah, and 4 years later, I mean, it's like a death when you don't. And then to lose one, when you finally do get pregnant, get all excited, and then lose it, it's devastating emotionally. So, you know, it's like, I guess at least 5 years before we finally, you know, realize it's just not going to happen. Or if it does, we're going to be really surprised. And, but, you know, I mean, you went and took all the tests, and, you know, and there's nothing apparently wrong. Just by God's design, that's all the kids we're going to have, I guess. But it's, for a woman, it's very heart-rending not to have a child when they want one. And so if you haven't been through that, and, you know, be aware that can happen. 25% of couples can't have kids. You know, when they think they can, they try it, it doesn't happen. And it's a very difficult thing. And on the husband's part, it takes a great deal of patience and understanding, because it's life and death. Been through that?
I have 3 kids, right? They're 4 years apart for the first 2 and 5 years for the second 2. So, yeah.
Yeah, so you know about trying and trying and trying.
Oh, yeah.
Well, God bless you, though. He gave you 3. That's neat.
Oh, they're great kids.
Yeah.
So how would you view someone today who is in that situation and hired a surrogate?
I'm not comfortable with surrogate fertility approaches. You know, there are some creative ways that we do things now, you know, with the different drugs and things like that. And I struggle with that. I don't know, you know, again, this is moving into an area where the Bible didn't speak. The biggest problem that I have is that it's still genetically, you're having sex with somebody else. Now, if you talk about or are you talking about the surrogate mother where they take the husband and wife's egg sperm and stick it in another womb?
And implant it.
Oh, and implant it?
I mean, how do you counsel, how would you as a pastor, or how would you counsel someone in your congregation that said, so-and-so has volunteered, my third cousin feels for our situation, and she's offered to be the incubator.
Yeah, be the incubator.
What do you say?
Yeah, test tubes you can do that with too.
Yeah.
To a point.
But in fact, that's what they do, is they do it in a test tube, and then they implant it. I have less problem with that than the one where they say, let's say the husband's sperm and fertilize this woman. You know, so it's really not the husband and wife; it's the husband and someone else. I have more trouble with that than I would have with a surrogate mother who just is providing an incubator. But you know, in fact, I think it's in California now, they have something like 4 or 5 slots in terms of the parentage of a child. Yeah, now they have a slot where you list the biological father, the biological mother, the surrogate mother. I mean, they have all these different categories that you can be filled out. And of course, the courts are trying to deal with now, you know, whose child is that really, and there's all those messes. But it is a difficult thing. And fortunately, I've never had to deal with that yet. But someday probably will.
That's frustrating. Coming from a perspective of a woman who can't have kids, I can't have kids, and Robert and I knew that before we got married. I have 600 students at school, which is great, but if I ever wanted one, which thank goodness I can't have them because I don't, there's so many kids out there that are abandoned and not cared for and thrown away. Instead of sticking whatever of your DNA into someone else, grab someone's kid they don't want.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my issue. I'm done.
No, but that's a very good point. There's so many orphans, in essence.
But even going to the other end of things, to the different forms of keeping from having kids.
Yeah.
From a pastoral standpoint, I really struggle with how do you cancel at that end too.
That's right.
In a sense, because they both really seem to be in the same area of God is sovereign, we understand, even though men make choices.
Yeah.
So in a sense, it's not an affront to his sovereignty, but on the other hand, is it an attempt to be an affront to his sovereignty? You know, that struggle And some
It
people
is.
have problems with it, and some don't, and you wonder why someone's conscience is bothered and someone else's isn't.
Yeah.
From a pastoral standpoint, like your question.
And it's,
Send you a
and,
pastor down the street, because I don't know.
well, you know, I think it comes to I think that's one of those bridges we have to cross each time we come across it. And you may find one circumstance very different from another, in the sense that you may be more comfortable with this couple versus this couple and things like that. You know, I know a couple in the Dallas area that's been trying for years and years, and they're looking at the option of adopting, but they're still going through all these other different procedures. They've tried the different, the fertility drugs and things like that. And there's something, where the wife wants to give that life. I mean, and it's one of these things. But at the same time, they're working on the other angle as well. They haven't abandoned the idea. In fact, I know another couple that they kept losing babies. She'd get pregnant, but she'd lose them after 2 to 3 months, just like 4